Betrayal. The whisper of it, the chilling thought of it, can unravel empires, shatter trust, and bring down even the mightiest figures. It's a concept as old as human society itself, a fundamental breach of loyalty that has always, and perhaps will always, evoke the deepest, most visceral condemnation. But when that betrayal isn't against a friend or a family member, when it strikes at the very heart of the state, against the sovereign, or the collective will of a nation, it transcends ordinary crime. It becomes treason. And for this ultimate affront, for this most profound act of treachery, societies throughout history have devised punishments that go far beyond mere execution. They sought not just to end a life, but to utterly obliterate the traitor's memory, their dignity, and even their very physical form, in ways designed to be a terrifying, unforgettable spectacle for all who witnessed it. Imagine the sheer terror, the absolute horror of knowing your end wouldn't be a swift, clean dispatch, but a meticulously choreographed descent into public agony and dismemberment. We're going to explore a chilling chapter in human justice, or perhaps injustice. We're going to look at the historical levels of death sentences specifically reserved for traitors. These weren't just different ways to die. They represented a calculated escalation of suffering, humiliation, and destruction of the body, each level designed to underscore the heinousness of the crime and to project the absolute power of the state, from a comparatively merciful end to a prolonged, agonizing dismemberment. These were the ultimate retributions, engineered to ensure that no one, absolutely no one, would ever dare to follow in a traitor's footsteps. Now, to truly understand these levels, we first need to grasp the historical context. Treason, particularly high treason, was considered an assault on the divine order, an attack on God's chosen representative on earth, the monarch, or against the fundamental stability of the realm. It wasn't just murder. It was an act that threatened the very fabric of society, sowing chaos and undermining authority. Because of this, the punishment had to be equally profound. A public ritual intended to purify the social body by expelling the diseased element with extreme prejudice. This wasn't about private vengeance. This was a performative act, a stark warning etched into the memory of every citizen that loyalty was paramount and disloyalty would be met with an almost unthinkable brutality. The body of the traitor became a canvas for this message, to be tortured, disfigured, and displayed. And while methods varied across time and cultures, a particularly stark hierarchy of these punishments emerged, especially in medieval and early modern England, demonstrating what we can categorize as 4 distinct levels of death sentences for those who dared to betray. At the lowest, or perhaps we should say, the times least brutal times end of this horrifying spectrum, we find asterisk, asterisk, level 1, the merciful beheading. Asterisk, asterisk. This form of execution was often reserved for nobility, for those of higher social standing. It was still a death sentence, undeniably, but compared to the other options, it was considered a privilege, a gesture of relative mercy. The condemned would be led to a block, usually on a scaffold, and their head would be severed with an axe or sword. The intent was a swift, relatively clean death. Think of Anne Boleyn or Sir Thomas More. They were traitors in the eyes of the crown, but their status afforded them an end that, while public and final, spared them the prolonged agony and mutilation inflicted upon commoners. It acknowledged their rank, even in disgrace. This was the most honorable way for a traitor to die, if such a term can even apply to an execution. But don't misunderstand, it was still a spectacle, the severed head often displayed to the crowd. Yet, the body itself remained largely intact, a small concession in a world of extreme cruelty. It was a recognition that even a high-ranking traitor, though condemned, retained a flicker of the dignity of their birth. Moving further down this grim ladder of retribution, we encounter asterisk asterisk. Level 2. Simple hanging, or burning at the stake for women. Asterisk asterisk. For men convicted of lesser forms of treason, or for those whose high treason sentence was commuted, a simple hanging was often the fate. Here, the condemned was hanged by the neck until dead. While certainly a terrible end, it lacked the elaborate, torturous preliminary stages of more severe sentences. The goal was death, and a public display of that death, but without the additional, agonizing components designed to prolong suffering and desecrate the body. However, for women convicted of high treason, The punishment took a different, yet equally horrific form. Burning at the stake. This wasn't due to any perceived tenderness, but rather, as historical documents rather starkly put it, for reasons of public decency. The idea of subjecting a woman to the public disembowelment and dismemberment reserved for men was deemed, perhaps ironically, too scandalous for public viewing. Instead, she would be chained to a stake, and fire would be set beneath her. The agony of burning alive, of course, was immense, a slow and excruciating death, often preceded by suffocation from the smoke. It was a deeply symbolic act too, often associated with heresy, suggesting a purification by fire for the ultimate spiritual and temporal betrayal. So, while the method differed drastically from hanging, the level of public humiliation and excruciating pain was, in many ways, comparable to a severe male commoner's execution, though without the full dismemberment. Then, we delve into the beginnings of true ritualistic degradation, with *** level 3, drawing and hanging, often with posthumous mutilation, ***. This level marks a significant step up in severity, beginning to incorporate elements that were designed to dishonor the body even before death. The term drawing here refers to the act of being dragged to the place of execution, typically fastened to a hurdle or a sledge, pulled by a horse through the streets. Imagine the rough cobblestones, the jeering crowds, the physical pain of being dragged along, all before the gallows were even reached. This was deliberate. It was meant to inflict suffering and humiliation, leaving the traitor bruised and battered before the main event. Once at the gallows, the individual would be hanged until dead. But sometimes, even this wasn't the end of the punishment for the body. While not always involving the full, live disembowelment of the most extreme sentence, posthumous mutilation was not uncommon. This might include beheading after death, and sometimes even quartering, but performed on a lifeless body. This still served the purpose of denying the body a whole burial, scattering the remains as a warning. It was a less intense version of the ultimate punishment, perhaps used when the court wished to show a degree of clemency while still making an emphatic statement about the severity of the crime. This stage of punishment represents the state's growing desire not just to kill, but to utterly defile the physical form of the betrayer, making an example of every inch of their being. The public spectacle was amplified, creating a deeper, more lasting impact. And finally, we arrive at the absolute pinnacle of state-sanctioned cruelty, the most infamous and utterly dehumanizing death sentence reserved exclusively for male traitors. ***. Level 4. Hanging, drawing, and quartering. ***. This was the supreme punishment for high treason in medieval and early modern Britain, a method so horrific that it has embedded itself in our collective consciousness. It was a multi-stage ritual of torture and execution, designed for maximum agony and public terror. The first step, as with level 3, was drawing. The condemned man, often already battered and bruised, would be tied to a wooden frame or hurdle and dragged behind a horse from prison through the public streets to the gallows. This journey was no mere transit. It was part of the punishment, an extended public humiliation where the traitor was exposed to the jeers, insults, and even physical assaults of the crowd. The deliberate slow pace ensured everyone could witness the abject state of the condemned. Next came the hanging, but not to the point of death. The traitor would be suspended by the neck, often for a short period, just enough to bring him to the brink of unconsciousness, to experience the agonizing suffocation. But then he would be cut down, still alive and often regaining full consciousness, gasping for air. This was crucial. The subsequent stages required the victim to still be alive to experience the full terror and pain. It prolonged the suffering, ensuring the individual was fully aware of the horrors being inflicted. What followed next was arguably the most barbaric part of the sentence, the disemboweling and emasculation. While still alive, the traitor's genitals would be cut off. Then, his abdomen would be sliced open, and his intestines, his very bowels, would be pulled out and burned before his own eyes. Imagine the unimaginable pain, the shock, the absolute violation, watching your own insides being consumed by fire. This act wasn't just about killing, it was about destroying the very essence of the individual, denying them any peace, any intactness, even in their final moments. It was designed to strip away every last vestige of humanity. Finally, after this horrific ordeal, the still living or barely living traitor would be beheaded. The head, often parboiled and displayed prominently on a pike, perhaps on London Bridge, served as a grim, undeniable trophy of the state's power. And then, the body itself would be quartered, divided into 4 pieces. These quarters were often sent to different parts of the country, similarly parboiled to prevent decay, and displayed in public places as further warnings to any who might harbor thoughts of rebellion or disloyalty. This fragmented, scattered body was the ultimate symbol of a traitor's fate, his very being torn apart and denied any form of honorable burial. The entire process of hanging, drawing, and quartering was a theatrical performance of power, a public ritual of state terror. It was meant to horrify, to deter, and to unequivocally establish the boundaries of acceptable behavior. It communicated that treason was not merely a crime, but a spiritual and physical corruption that demanded total annihilation. A fate worse than any other, stripping the condemned of identity, integrity, and any hope of a dignified remembrance. This level of punishment was the state shouting its authority from the gallows, a chilling declaration that some betrayals simply could not, and would not, be forgiven. These 4 levels, or rather these distinctions in severity for treason, offer a stark window into how societies once grappled with the ultimate breach of trust. They show us a world where justice was often intertwined with spectacle, where punishment served not only as retribution, but as a powerful, terrifying tool of social control. From the relatively swift, though still brutal, beheading to the protracted, agonizing dismemberment of hanging, drawing, and quartering, each tier was a carefully calibrated message. It was a message about who deserved mercy, who deserved an end to their life, and who deserved an end to their very essence. A complete erasure designed to echo through the ages.